I go for refuge in the Buddha. I go for refuge in the Dharma. I go for refuge in the Sangha. So I feel a little silly sitting up here with so many eminent monks and nuns at the gathering, but part of the purpose of the gathering is for us to hear from monastics in different traditions, so thank you for inviting me to speak. However, even though I'm in the Korean tradition, my talk today, my brief words on the Dharma, are inspired by something that I read from Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo a number of years ago that has stayed with me. And I'm paraphrasing here, but she talked about how we are in the prison of samsara, but people think that if they just dress up their cell, that's enough. Paint the walls a nice shade of green, get some curtains, some flowers, a nice lamp, pretty pillows for the bed, and that's good. That's what we can do. But this isn't enough because we are still in the prison. This is what we do. We keep grasping and clinging, looking for bits of happiness, lasting happiness in things that cannot last, in temporary things. We're really like addicts. Right? We're drug addicts, constantly looking for that next hit of happiness. In fact, I would say the only difference between people that we identify as drug addicts and the rest of us is that our addictions are more socially acceptable. That's really the only difference. And of course, we do this because we have some success. We wouldn't have cultivated this habit over countless lifetimes of chasing after lasting happiness and things that don't last if we didn't have success. We do get some happiness. But we end up, we're like the hungry ghosts. We eat and it turns to molten lead in our mouths. Even when we do find happiness, it doesn't last. So I first came to the Dharma, I'm 44 now. I first came to the Dharma when I was 12. My father became a professor of political science, but he took a year out to explore religion. He got a scholarship to go to what was then called the Claremont Theological Seminary in Southern California, and I found his World Religions textbook, which, speaking of patriarchy this week, was ever so inclusively titled Man's Religions. I noticed that right away. So for some reason, I immediately read the section on Buddhism, and of course it was a college-level textbook, and I was 12 years old. There was plenty, I'm sure, I didn't understand. But when I read the Four Noble Truths, my eyes about jumped out of my skull. I stopped reading. I'm getting choked up a little thinking about it. It was a physical reaction to the Buddhist teachings, and I thought, that's it. That's what I want to do. So fast forward a few years, I was 15, and my mother's from the LA area, so I went to visit my grandparents. And you could see Mount Baldy from my grandparents' front lawn. Some of you have heard of the Mount Baldy Zen Center. That was my first real interaction, because I grew up in Normal, Illinois, which even now is not exactly a hotbed of Buddhist activity. My only access to the Dharma up to that point was through books. So this was my first encounter with other Western Buddhists, and my first face-to-face instruction in meditation. And then a few days later, I'd been going to the local library reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. So I was walking back to my grandparents' place from the library, and I looked up at the mountains and I said, I'm going to be a monk someday. Now, I told my friends at school, in high school, I said, I'm going to ordain someday. I'm going to be a Buddhist monk. And they were like, yeah, right. Ta-da! I showed you. So it took me till I was 30 to finally ordain, but I did it. I finally did it. And of course, I've been bumbling and stumbling my way through this monastic life. But as you know, whether you're ready or not, the instant you put on robes, people have questions. So more than once over the years, people have, approached me and asked me about my monastic life, and they just cannot understand how I could give up what they perceive to be the causes of happiness. They're like, no sex, no beer, you can't have alcohol? What's wrong with you? But then I talk about how we grasp and cling and we're looking for lasting happiness and things that don't last. And then bringing it back to this prison metaphor, I say, you're looking at the vows as the bars on the cage, but they're actually the key that opens the door. And when I explain it that way, then they go, oh, okay, I can understand that. I'm 99.9% sure I have not inspired anyone to ordain, but I've maybe planted some seeds. So they seem to understand that. But the other important part of that is I need to be reminded of my own inspiration for ordaining. There's actually a story about my original ordination master, Kenshin Kuncho Gyaltsen Rinpoche, who was sitting in the basement of his center in Maryland, and one of the lay people found him downstairs with earphones on, listening to his own Dharma teachings. And they're like, what are you doing? Are you critiquing your own teachings? What? And he said, people don't understand. I need the Dharma too. So I feel the same way. I'm reminded of my own vocation as a monk. And this is what's so special about this gathering for me. I came to the 9th conference years ago at Vajrapani Institute. It's where I first met Venerable Thupten Chidron. And I think you announced there that you had just purchased the land for Sravasti Abbey, maybe. Were you?
We got it in 2003.
Oh, it was much, a year earlier than that, maybe. I'm not doing math right. That's why I'm a monk. I can't do math. Anyway, it was the first time that I heard about Sravasti Abbey. Or maybe it wasn't the 9th conference. I don't know. But anyway, I was really inspired by that. And I'm inspired by seeing all of you in robes. I live in a Vietnamese Buddhist community, a temple community. There are monks and nuns in a house next door. But it's different seeing Westerners in robes and hearing your stories and learning about the work that you're doing to establish the Sangha in the West. So thank you very much. Thank you. And it's my prayer that we will all go back to our communities re-energized and inspired to continue doing this work. Thank you very much.